All right, so we're back in line. Everybody's got some good practice. I think we'll never have trouble loading tools. That's great. So again, that was the MDI, the tool change mode on the machine. What else can we do in MDI? Well, there's a coolant button there. And we'll go ahead and turn the coolant on. Ah, look out. That'll turn on even with the door open. So if it's going to spray out, you might want to close the doors before you turn the coolant on. And it's not really a safety risk, but you could cover yourself with coolant, so keep an eye out for that. There are a few different coolant hoses there that you can just move by hand in position to wherever it sprays correctly on your tool. There's also a programmable coolant nozzle, which is kind of nice if you have maybe 4 or 5 tools in your program. They're all at different lengths, and you don't want to have to stop your program in between each tool and readjust these hoses. You'd like it to automatically go to whichever height those tools are. So I won't show it in the setup here today, but there's a way to just program that box to shoot lower for long tools and higher for short tools, and have that automatically change whenever you change tools. You also just notice there's valves up at the top. We can turn off any of these hoses or turn on others, and even control the pressure, the full steam or half steam or whatever we wanted for these. All right, so that's the coolant. Next thing we should do is just set up a job. And I'll do kind of a quick setup. Certainly the longer and more care you take in a setup, the more accurate you can get the coordinate system and the tool lengths, and you'll be more accurate in your cutting. But we can actually do a setup pretty quickly. And we're going to use some of the buttons that we haven't really seen yet. Well, mostly the offset button. So go ahead and push offset. And it comes up, it says tool, position, length, and diameter. And it's basically 1 through 24, however many tools. This goes with the tools. Tool, length, and diameter. We're talking about the cutting tools. So how long, what the diameter is of each cutting tool. Really the important thing here is the tool length. But I'll go ahead and hit offset again. And this one it says work 0 offset. So the second page here deals with the work piece. That's the table and where it moves. So one page deals with the tools, one page deals with the work. If I hit offset again, it goes back to the tool. And so it basically just toggles back and forth between these 2 pages. One for the tool, one for the work. Well, let's go to the work. It has G code, G52 to G150 or G154. Really, the one we usually use is G54. That's just a code you'd put in your program, and it would say, go find the XYZ coordinates that are typed in here, and make that our origin for running our program. Okay, so you could use G55 or 56, but G54 is the default. That's what most people use to program. So one of the first lines in the code, it would say G54. And when it says that, or the controller gets to that line, it'll go right here and read whatever's in those registers, and it'll say that is the origin for the program. So in order to set up, we have to go to that line and put in the right numbers for the coordinate system we want the program to run in. So let's do that now. In fact, I'll go ahead and clear these out. It's probably a good idea to check before we do this. Hey, Jen, is it all right if we clear out the G54 numbers here? Do you want me to write them down first? All right, I'm going to write them down. This is something good. 1391 for the X and 4.33 for the Y. Why would we want to do that? Well, she's probably spent a lot of time carefully touching off and getting that origin, and she's in the middle of running a part. So when we're done, she'd want to go back and not have to reload and touch off that setup exercise. So I wrote them down. We'll put it back when we're done. But let's zero those out. So I can just do a 0 and F1. And there's a little, to edit these numbers, there's a little menu down at the bottom. It says right add. So if we say 0 and use the right key, it adds 0 to that number, and it doesn't change it. F1 set. So if we say 0 and F1, then that tries to change the number. And there's a little setting in here that tries to prevent you or just asks you, are you sure you want to do that? Yeah, we're sure. So just Y, and then that sets it to 0. All right, so right now, 0, 0 for G54. So if we ran a program now with the G54 code, it would think the 0, the program, is written all right at the same as the machine coordinate system in the lower left or the front left corner. But we want the 0 to be maybe on the corner of our vise. So we wrote our code, suppose, so that the corner of our vise is 0, 0. And we want the XY coordinate, the coordinates that are running the program to be from that relative 0, 0. So let's go do that now. I'm just going to jog the machine down to that position and then read what the coordinates are and put those into the G54 line. So to do that, I need the handle jog. And I'm going to bring the Z down. I'm going to bring the X over. I'm going to bring the Y over. And I'm going to put that tool right above the corner of my vise where I want it to be touched off. The X-axis looks good. I'm just eyeballing it, right? The Y-axis is a little far. I'm going to move the Y. A little more. All right, so that's X and Y axis are right where I want them to be for 0 for this program. And if we look on the screen, if I highlight over that X register value, it shows the current X position down below, minus 13.9072. So that's the number I want in the G54 row. I could just type in that number and set it in, or I could use this button, Part 0 Set. And that takes the current position, loads it right in. And it actually moves us over to do the same thing for the Y. There's the current position for the Y, Part 0 Set, loads that in. Okay, so just a shorthand, current location is now where it's going to run the program from in terms of 0, 0. I didn't do the Z though. I didn't do it because usually we use G54 only for the table. Remember, these are the work offsets, and the work piece sits on the table, and the table only moves in X and Y, right? It doesn't move in Z. So now we could set something in the Z, and that would shift our coordinate system up and down, but normally the procedure is to leave it at 0 and just set the X and Y on the work piece. So how are we going to set the Z? The tool offset, right, because that's what moves up and down in the Z. So let's toggle over to the tool. And we're right now in tool number 3. So let's go to tool 3 and we'll 0 that out. Should we write that down? Maybe. I'm not sure if someone's using that one. 146217. We'll go ahead and 0. Oops. All right, so tool 3 is zeroed out in terms of just its length. The diameter, tool diameter, that's for something else. If we're going to compensate, that's a little more advanced. But we do have to set the tool length. So let's set the tool length. Let's go back to the machine. We'll turn on the handle jog and move the tool over. And I'll set the very tip of that tool right down to the top of the workpiece. You don't have to, but that's usually where we set Z equals 0 at the top of the workpiece. So you always know if it's negative, you're into the cut somewhere. So that's just eyeballed right at the top of the workpiece. And back on our offset page, again, kind of similarly, the current Z position is loaded, and we just hit not part 0 set, but tool set or tool offset measure it's called, and that loads the current Z position up into the length of the tool and basically sets Z equals 0 right where I have it right now. So I just did that really quickly. If we wanted to be more accurate, we would want to set the X and Y offset maybe with an edge finder. Right? So an edge finder spins around and you move it over to the edge, and when it touches, as soon as it jumps over, you know that's right at the edge of the part. And you can get pretty accurate, down to a 1,000th, or maybe even if you're good, a 10,000th of an inch accuracy. If you zero the machine right when the edge finder jumps, And then as you remember, the edge finder usually has a diameter of 0.2, so you have to shift it over 0.1 from there. Either add or subtract 0.1 to get the edge right on the edge of the part. With the tool length, we should also take care. We don't have an edge finder for the height, but we would bring the tool down above the part, and instead of touching the top of the part, which you're likely to break or chip off that tool, we would touch onto some other block. But really the way to do it is to bring the tool maybe within about an inch of the top of the part, and then slide a block in, and if the tool is too high, bring it down. Slide the block back in. If the tool is too high, bring it down. Slide the block. If the block hits it, that means the tool is too low. Bring it a little bit back up. So you're really trial and erroring. You'd never bring the tool right down on the block, because then again we'll chip the tool. So we're trying to trial and error back and forth until we get it right where we want it. Then we're 1 inch above the part. We can zero it there and then subtract an inch out so that the tool is right on the top of the workpiece. Okay, so that takes a little practice, and you can do that on your own. So we've set the X and Y, we've set the tool length. Maybe I should also show a couple other buttons here in the display. Settings and parameters. They're right underneath the position and the offset. We've talked about position and offset. Settings basically are all the settings for the machine. Things you can change and have the machine work a little differently. Like if the machine was interpreting everything in inches or English units, you could go down, and one of the settings is to change it to millimeters. One of the settings is to have a door hold override, which means we want to be able to run the program with the door open. And I don't recommend that, but in certain situations you do want to be able to kind of run a program with the door open, even just like a simple thing like turning the spindle on. And that's a good setting to override. So settings can be override. You should probably put them back after you're done, because we're kind of used to them being a certain way. Parameters, similar, all settings of the machine, but they're not things you can change. The parameters are usually set by the Haas technician when they come, and they define kind of what's in the machine. How fast can it go? There's like the max spindle rating, what different components or features it has. And when they set up the machine, when you first purchase it, they set all those parameters, and they're pretty much set. So they're not for the operator to play with. All right, so I guess one of the things that we usually do during this setup is the edge finding. And because I did it so simply, we didn't really get to see it, but it's turning on the spindle. And we kind of saw it before in the MDI mode. I had a program that basically turned on the spindle by itself, but I'll show you a little bit different way to do that. I had S300 M3, so it sets the command and then turns on the spindle. If I delete that M3 and just have it commanded, I'm going to jog this tool back up. And then I can run that program, and it just sets the commanded spindle speed to 300. It doesn't turn it on. It just commands 300. And then I can turn it on down in the bottom left here. It's called the overrides. And one of them is the spindle. It says stop, clockwise, and counterclockwise. If I say clockwise, now it'll turn on that spindle at 300 RPM. And then I can stop it, do counterclockwise if I want. I don't recommend that. It's almost always clockwise. And you notice it shows up on the screen here, 300 RPM. And if I stop it, it's back down to 0. Most of our kind of current operating conditions show up on the screen somewhere, but the other button that shows them as current commands, that's something we can display, and so all those current conditions show up on the screen, which is nice sometimes. We see the current speed is 300, it's not feeding at all, that's at 0, and we can check some of the other toggles or switches that we may set on the screen. It also shows the current program, which is our MDI program. So a lot of operators like that current commands button. It gives you an environment to run the program where you kind of see everything that's going on, rather than just watching, say, the program scrolling by.